The following is a paid program by the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to Attorneys on Call, the program that gives you free legal information from the Whitley Law Firm. Now, here's your host, Drew Smith.
Well, hi again, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Attorneys on Call. You may have heard the term wrongful death, but what does that really mean here in the state of North Carolina? In studio with me, Bob Whitley and Ben Whitley from the Whitley Law Firm. And gentlemen, I know this is the most difficult thing that you do as representing people around the state of North Carolina, the wrongful death claims. Bob, can you kind of just fill us in initially, and what does that mean? What's the definition of that?
Well, we all hear the term negligence, which is the basis of the typical automobile injury, personal injury claim. That is, somebody's negligence has resulted in someone being injured.
Sure.
And of course, the very worst injury that you could have would be that which is so serious that you die from that injury, either right at the scene or within a period of time thereafter. And Drew, they're difficult for us because we're human beings. Sure. And we have families and children, and I have grandchildren. And when you hear these heart-wrenching stories, I always tell my clients that I am a family person, but I've now got to talk to you, Mr. Client, just like this is a business, because they need information, they need to make decisions, but it's still special to me. I probably don't hold hands any more than I do when I'm handling a wrongful death, because the whole family is affected by it. It's an unexpected death. And I want to talk about some of the cases that I've been involved with and some of the wonderful families that I've met because of that. And I guess it's a word of caution to those that are listening, because if you've recently gone through this yourself, you may not want to hear this part of it, because the last thing in the world I would want to ever do is unintentionally cause grief to someone unnecessarily. But, you know, you seek in a wrongful death claim, just like you do in a personal injury claim, you seek money, damages, but it's never about the money. You know, one of my favorite imaginary jury arguments is in a death claim to tell that jury, if we could really do magic, that door of the courtroom would open and this decedent, whether it's a child or whoever the case is about, walks in. And we would turn to that jury and say, and now we don't want one penny of money. We want to pack up our briefcase and we want to go home.
Right.
But that just isn't going to happen in the real world. And Drew, it's about a sense of justice and responsibility. If a family has lost someone, they kind of want to know that if whoever did cause this is held responsible. Not necessarily serving a long time in jail, but just is held responsible so that their insurance company will have to acknowledge that responsibility, and that's by way of money. And the other is that sense of justice. But as I have mentioned on an earlier show, I've kind of learned in my senior years that it's a desire to get answers. They want to know what happened. Some of them want to know, what was it like for my loved one at the end? I had a dad in a bad wreck case on the highway where he was trying to get his vehicle off the road and was struck by another vehicle. That dad wanted me to ask the driver, was his son looking at him, did he know what was going to happen to him?
Man.
Or did he have his back to the car approaching and didn't know?
Wow.
And that's the kind of answers they want. And I've kind of learned that there's not a right or wrong answer. And it could be very hard for them to accept that, but they nevertheless want the truth. Some years ago, a wonderful young man was a student at State University and was in an apartment fire. He had worked that night, had gone to bed early, and his friends were downstairs, and somebody left a cigarette on a sofa, and the apartment house pretty much burned down, and he was killed. And this was an outstanding young man, wonderful family. And I well remember his mom's story about the sheriff coming to visit her to tell her that there'd been a fire. And I think he used the word dormitory. And I remember her saying, well, that's not him, because he wasn't in a dormitory.
Right.
Drew, there's a
Right.
sense of denial early on, too.
Okay.
Even I think when we have natural deaths in my house. I remember when my mom died, she was my favorite fan, and there were times when I just felt like I wanted to pick the phone up and call her. And I think that happens even more so when there's an unexpected death. And his dad, that student's dad, wanted to know about how he died. Did he pass out from smoke inhalation, or did he burn in the fire? And I remember telling him, I'm not sure you want to know those answers, but he did.
He wanted to know all that.
Yes,
Wow.
he wanted to know. And that's what people really want to know, or a lot of people want to know. Sometimes it's obvious, but in both of these cases, these families wanted to know. And you have the worst cases, and you meet some of the best families. There's a family in Oxford that had a young 16-year-old daughter who worked. She was respected in the schools, was the class comedian, and she was killed drastically as a backseat passenger in the family car as they were waiting to turn into their driveway on a Wednesday night after church services.
Oh, man.
And she died holding hands with her mom.
Oh.
And when you hear those stories, they're good. But these people are much stronger than I was about dealing with it. And she was a wonderful girl. I'll never forget, the family received a card, a sympathy card, from someone who identified themselves, said, but you don't know me, but I was a customer where your daughter worked. And I always got in line at her cash register because she made me smile. And she was so wonderful. And y'all did a great job raising her. And I think you should know that. So they're the kind of stories you hear. Recent tragic case that we're involved in deals with the death of a 2-year-old who was properly fastened to a seat, a toddler seat in the back seat of a vehicle.
Okay.
And it was kind of a freak T-bone type accident where there was so much intrusion into their vehicle that while it didn't appear immediately that child was seriously injured, that toddler, he suffered extensive internal injuries and within a period of 5 to 6 hours passed away.
Oh, man.
From internal bleeding. A lot of his internal organs had been lacerated and were in one way described as exploding.
Oh,
and that mom wanted to know, what had killed the little baby, from the medical standpoint. She knew the wreck that the child had sustained trauma in the wreck. But Drew, I always derive strength from these people because they're stronger at dealing with it than I am sometimes as their attorney. And our job is to tell their story, is to make that deceased person by old photographs and films and whatever way we can come alive. I'll never forget one of my very early cases when I was a young lawyer, was the death of a 16-year-old who was killed coming back from the beach. And I remember well her mom on the witness stand, and I asked her to tell us about her daughter. And we had a collage of pictures when she was a cheerleader, when she got her driver's license, and all these things growing up, her kindergarten pictures. And I'll never forget her mom up there on that witness stand, smiling and enjoying telling that jury about her little girl's life. And equally as compelling was her dad's testimony, or lack thereof. He couldn't talk. I got his name out, and I asked him to tell the jury, and he simply could not talk. And so they're kind of the stories we run into, and the wonderful families. And that last case I was telling you about, that mom became a spokesperson for our Arrive Alive program because there was alcohol involved in the wreck that took her daughter's life. And again, a sense of responsibility is what they want, and they want justice in whatever form, and they want information about what really happened to their loved one.
It's an amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Bob. It really is impactful for many of us to hear that. And once again, if you want more information of what you just heard, Bob Whitley does have a DVD, a video available. What you need to know about wrongful death claims in the state of North Carolina. You can get that by going to the website, whitleylawfirm.com. You can get that by calling the 800 number. We do have operators standing by live right now, and you can order that DVD. We do want to mention that coming up in the program, a very important consumer safety alert. You need to know about this because it affects many of us. Once again, a consumer safety alert we're going to be talking about next on Attorneys on Call.